Next on the news.
I'm here with 5th grader Chloe Chavez inside her invention, the Tornado. It's an umbrella that keeps your clothes dry too. And it's one of more than 100 at Our Lady of Sorrows Invention Convention. I'm Jessica Easthope. That story's coming up next.
Meeting Christians in Africa, Pope Francis arrives in Congo to begin a mission of healing and peace. A rare seat at the table, the American that's being given a powerful seat at the Vatican. Plus, a Super Bowl commercial about Jesus, the expensive ad that's trying to showcase the church's teachings. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now.
When you go inside and it's raining, your clothes don't get wet.
The future is here. Tomorrow's scientists are the Catholic school students of today. Our Lady of Sorrows is showing off their STEM skills this Catholic Schools Week with an Invention Convention. Students are tasked with following the scientific method to make everyday items better. Currents News' Jessica Easthope shows us if their experiments were successful.
Your hand can't reach the bottles and containers.
Thomas Edison, Benjamin Franklin, and Dio Reyes. You might not know that last one yet, but Dio hopes one day his name will be said among the greats.
I think this is the best invention I made so far, so it was a really big accomplishment for me.
But for now, he's a 7th grader at Our Lady of Sorrows Catholic Academy, and he's showing off his latest invention.
As you can see, my hand won't be able to reach inside, so neither does the sponge, and I won't be able to clean.
The Spinge.
I was really tired of trying to clean the inside of bottles and containers, so I was like, how about I make an invention that can help me solve this problem?
The Spinge is one of more than 120 useful inventions made by the 4th through 8th grade students as a part of Catholic Schools Week.
Learning has to be fun. Learning has to be hands-on. You know, it's not all about what you learn in the textbooks. It has to be reality.
Principal Francis SERPICO used to be the school's science teacher.
We are now about to begin our Invention Convention.
STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, is a diocese-wide priority. According to the superintendent's office, every single diocese school offers some kind of specialized STEM program or extracurricular activity.
All the academics are put into one thought when you're creating a project like this.
The students have been working on their projects since December. Some are the kind of thing you can't believe you didn't think of first.
When you go inside and it's raining, your clothes don't get wet. You have it to cover your head, but sometimes your clothes get really wet. If you put the plastic around it, your clothes would stay more drier and less wet.
The inventions will be judged, and there will be 5 winners from each grade. Those top students will then be presented a certificate in front of the entire school and their parents. In Corona, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
And if you're interested in sending your children to Catholic school, you can enroll next year. Just visit CatholicSchoolsBQ.org or call 718-965-7380 for more information. And stick with Currents News and the tablet. We'll continue to highlight Catholic Schools Week in the diocese and the amazing people in the classrooms. Schools in the diocese are doing such a great job. They're even attracting students who aren't Catholic. This week on Currents News, we're going to introduce you to one family who chose a faith-based education after watching stories unfold on Currents News and in the tablet.
She said, I have a crazy idea. And I said, I think it might be the same thing I'm thinking. And before I knew it, she blurted out, she said, what about Catholic school? And I said, yeah. And it was one of the easiest decisions we've ever made together.
And they're not the only ones. 30% of students enrolled in Diocese of Brooklyn schools are not Catholic, but their parents see value in the faith-based curriculum. That's Thursday on Currents News. President Joe Biden is taking an infrastructure tour of New York. He announced a $292 million grant, which will go to the Hudson Tunnel project. He was at the West Side Rail Yard and said the project was a national priority. It's all part of a Rail Week tour in which he already touted the replacement of a 150-year-old rail tunnel in Baltimore. One place the president isn't visiting, the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal. That's where migrants from the Watson Hotel in Hell's Kitchen are settling in. This is a walkthrough video of what the terminal looks like, and as you can see, people are trying to make the most of it. The mayor's office says it is a safe and valuable resource for migrants to use. More punishment being dealt to first responders in Memphis tied to the death of TYRE NICHOLS. 3 EMTs were fired on Monday by the Memphis Fire Department. The fire chief said the 3 failed to properly assess NICHOLS. 2 other officers were put on administrative leave. No word on exactly what role they may have played in NICHOLS' death. Friends and family are remembering TYRE NICHOLS and say because of the legacy he left behind, they know he's looking down on them.
He was such a good person that it's almost like, you know, he's definitely, if you believe in that, he's definitely going to heaven, and then that makes him an angel. So now we have him as an angel to, like, you know, look over us.
Here's something else that'll warm your heart. The GoFundMe NICHOLS' mother created to raise money for mental health treatment and to create a memorial skateboard park is thriving. It's hovering around $1.3 million. Pope Francis touched down today in Kinshasa, officially beginning his apostolic trip to Africa. The Holy Father's first day in the Democratic Republic of Congo began with an impressive welcoming ceremony. Afterwards, he visited the nation's president. The pontiff also addressed the country's authorities and diplomats, decrying the conflicts that have been taking place while calling for renewed efforts for peace.
I come to you in the name of Jesus as a pilgrim of reconciliation and of peace. I have greatly desired to be here, and now at last I have come to bring you the closeness and the affection and the consolation of the entire Catholic Church.
This is actually the Pope's 5th visit to Africa and the 60th country he's visited since he was elected in 2013. ELISE Allen, senior correspondent for CRUX, is traveling with Pope Francis. She joins us now from Congo. Hi, ELISE.
Hello, Christine.
So, ELISE, we just saw a video of Pope Francis in a wheelchair and with a cane. As you know, the trip was postponed from last July because of the Pope's knee problems. How is the 86-year-old pontiff holding up?
You know, the Pope is still going. He's still making this trip, and he was bright and cheery this morning and greeting us all. So you can still see that he's strong, even for it. In terms of his physical limitations, he's still strong, but he did seem a little tired and sore. You know, he'd mentioned in a recent interview that the diverticulitis, for which he had surgery a couple of years ago, has returned. And so you could see that a little bit. He seemed slightly uncomfortable and tired today as we saw him on the papal flight, but he was still there. He was still making his best effort to be cheerful for us, and he's obviously so very committed to making these trips and to being there for the people of the Congo and the South Sudan.
And you mentioned the flight on the plane. The Pope did take a moment while flying over the Sahara to pray for migrants. The desert is the only escape route for those trying to find a better life in Europe. Talk about how dangerous of a trek that is.
You know, well, a lot of experts will say that this is actually one of the most dangerous routes that migrants can take. I mean, you're talking about extreme heat, extreme temperatures, under the sun, and many of the migrants who go that route are traveling with human smugglers, and these guys often they pack them in and they give them very precious little resources, because you need a little bit to go a long way if you're going to make this trip. And so oftentimes there are very dire circumstances that are kind of pushing people to the extreme. And so there have been, some reports say there have been at least 2,000 reported deaths in the Sahara since 2014, but that number is actually far higher because most of these deaths are not reported.
Just awful. Now, the Pope didn't mince words when he spoke today. Let's listen quickly.
Hands off the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hands off Africa. Stop choking Africa.
Pretty strong words there. The Holy Father condemning exploitation, saying the country hasn't benefited from its own resources. What did he say needs to change?
Well, as you heard from that little clip, that one remark from the Pope, it got thunderous applause. So people are really receiving his message here. They're excited about what he has to say, and for the Pope, what he said really needs to change for this country to move forward, is there needs to be an end to exploitation. There needs to be an end of kind of a for-profit mentality where global superpowers come in and pillage the land and do nothing to develop the country and help it stand on its own 2 feet, and they do nothing to stop the conflict that is ravaging the eastern regions and kind of bringing this and keeping this country on its knees. He said, so a lot of that needs to change, and he specifically mentioned investments in education and in young people, because Africa is such a young continent. You know, youth are really the future here, so he really stressed the need to invest in the future by investing in them and in social structures that are not just temporary but are going to last.
Really quickly, I know Congo, it has a large Catholic population. The church is politically powerful. It's often on the front lines in the country. Tell us about the church's humanitarian efforts there.
Well, it's a good question. You know, the church is at the front lines. You know, this country has been ravaged by decades of conflict, and there's fighting ongoing in the eastern regions, and there are millions of dead and displaced. And the church, through various organizations, Caritas, Catholic Relief Services, the Advocacy Foundation, is on the front lines providing humanitarian assistance, emergency aid, food security, sanitation, really trying to help people who need those really basic needs. And Pope Francis tomorrow will meet with members of some charities who are active in Congo to show his support to these guys who are really, at times, putting their own safety on the line to help people in need.
All right, Elise Allen, senior correspondent for CRUX, and we will check back in with you tomorrow.
Thank you, Christine.
As we mentioned, there are many devout Catholics in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In fact, it's one of 5 African nations that make up a top 10 list of countries with the most practicing Catholics. On the list by World Values Survey, besides Congo, which has more than 37 million practicing Catholics, is Nigeria with more than 30 million participating, Uganda with more than 28 million, Tanzania with over 17 million, and right behind it, Angola with over 16 million. Be sure to watch Currents News and read the tablet all week long for exclusive continuing coverage of the Pope's trip to Africa. There's a lot more news headed your way. Tapped by the Vatican, Pope Francis picks a Chicago native for a powerful position. Back in session, a school reopens after a 6-year-old shot his teacher. And the Super Bowl ad that's trying to score a touchdown for Jesus. An American bishop has been chosen to lead one of the Vatican's most powerful departments. Bishop Robert Francis Prevost, who originally hails from Chicago, is now in charge of the Dicastery of Bishops. The group advises the Pope on the appointment of new prelates around the world. He is replacing Cardinal Marc Ouellet, who is retiring from this position after 12 years. Bishop Prevost will take over the post on April 12th and will receive the title of Archbishop. Joining us now for a more in-depth look at this appointment is national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg. Hi, John.
Hi, Christine. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. So while Prevost is an American, he's done most of his religious work outside of America, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, he's a name that most American Catholics might not even know.
Right.
So, I mean, he's spent, since 2015, he's led a diocese in Peru. And before that, he was head of the Global Augustinian Order. And then, you know, he was ordained a priest in 1982. And even from then on, never held an appointment in the U.S., was in Peru doing missionary work that entire time.
Wow. Okay. So this is a pretty powerful position at the Vatican. What exactly is his role? What are his responsibilities?
That's exactly right. This is one of the most powerful departments in all of Vatican. And what it essentially leads is this is where bishop appointments go through. So this is the department that appoints the bishops to lead all of the dioceses in the world. Of course, Pope Francis gets the final say, but the head of this department is who makes those recommendations.
Okay. And as we mentioned, Cardinal Ouellet retired from the position. He is 78 years old, which is past the traditional retirement age. But he's also been surrounded by controversy. Talk a little bit about this lawsuit that he's dealing with.
Yeah, so Cardinal Ouellet, you know, he's had a few sexual misconduct allegations pop up in recent months. He's denied both of them, but one in particular in Canada, in his Archdiocese of Quebec, which he led for a number of years, he was identified in a lawsuit, and he has taken the step to countersue the woman that accused him in that lawsuit, saying that it was defamatory and it caused unjust harm to his reputation. And he countersued for $100,000. If he wins that, he has pledged to donate it to help to go to the Indigenous people of Canada.
Okay. And as far as Prevost's appointment, is this something that the Pope has final say with, or is it something that the dicastery maybe says, hey, we should go with this guy?
It's a little of both. Of course, the Pope does have the final say, but usually how these things go is the outgoing person, if they have as close a relationship as Ouellette did with Pope Francis, they give their recommendation. That's usually the person that would get this role.
All right, John Lavenberg, national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
A group of young men had a front row seat on how to become priests in the Diocese of Brooklyn. They were given insight about the vocation and how they can give back to the community. It happened at the Church of St. Mel in Queens. They met with Bishop Robert Brennan along with other church shepherds. The group also prayed and had a special dinner together. Bishop Brennan didn't just stop there. He also took the time to celebrate the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas with students of Midwood Catholic Academy. In a Facebook post, the bishop wrote that he considered it a great opportunity to visit the school kids. They reflected on the teachings of the feast's namesake and talked about the Beatitudes. Afterwards, they all went into the gymnasium and had a delicious feast. A Baptist pastor in Missouri got carjacked in his church's parking lot last Friday. Pastor Michael Coleman was putting a club on his car's steering wheel when the two young teens approached with a gun. They asked Pastor Coleman to get out and give them his wallet, which he did. They then asked him to remove the club from his wheel and start his truck. Eventually, they took off and struck two cars just a few feet away. They left the damaged car behind. Now Coleman says he's praying for some healing.
I would love to help change their lives, and I would love to help those parents that are trying to raise them. My heart goes out to Grandma, to Mom. It does.
Police have arrested a 13-year-old boy and are looking for the other teen. He was charged with first-degree robbery. Students at Rich Neck Elementary School have finally returned to class nearly a month after a 6-year-old allegedly shot his first-grade teacher. The kids were greeted with new safety protocols, which included metal detectors and mandatory clear backpacks. Mike Valerio explains the new protocols as anxious parents and kids prepared for their first day back.
A Virginia elementary school reopened Monday, nearly a month after a 6-year-old student allegedly shot a first-grade teacher. Police were on campus as anxious parents dropped off their children at Rich Neck Elementary in Newport News, Virginia.
It's sad that we have to go in and see all the officers there at that elementary school with these babies, but it made my heart feel better that they were there, taking it serious.
Students were met with numerous safety protocols, including use of clear backpacks, limited visitors, and 2 metal detectors. The city's police chief was at the school and says officers had favorable interactions with the kids.
We saw kids come in today. There was a lot of smiles, a lot of high fives, some fist bumps going on.
The school closed after first-grade teacher Abby Zwerner was critically injured on January 6th when a bullet was shot through her hand and into her chest, according to police. The 25-year-old was later stabilized and released from the hospital. The incident has resulted in the ousting of the Newport News public school superintendent and the reassignment of the school's principal. A lawyer representing the injured teacher alleged that school administrators were warned multiple times by staff who expressed concerns that the student had a gun and was making threats the day of the shooting. The school district declined to comment on the claims.
This should have never happened. It was preventable.
The gun that the 6-year-old allegedly brought to school was legally purchased by his mother, and police have said the Commonwealth's attorney will determine any possible charges. I'm Mike Valerio reporting.
Still to come on Currents News.
What's this controversial figure? Everywhere he went, people challenged him.
The $100 million Super Bowl ad that's campaigning for Jesus. Plus, a cool way to hold Mass, the chapel that's made out of ice. While New York City is still waiting for its first major snowfall of the season, the Catholic students out of Michigan University are preparing for an icy reception for their snow day tradition.
Friends, it's a great joy to welcome you to our ice mass this year, the first of our ice masses, and Mother Nature has cooperated with very appropriate winter weather.
Instead of building snowmen, every year students at Michigan Technological University create a palace of white snow called the Ice Chapel at Our Lady of Snows. The construction is supervised by the school's campus ministry and often includes 10-foot walls sculpted with ornamentations and an altar for students to celebrate Mass. If you want to catch that Mass in this winter wonderland, it will be live streamed. That'll happen on Friday, February 10th at 5:30 p.m. Just go to mtucatholic.org/icemass for more details. I'd rather watch that on TV. Grocery prices skyrocketed about 12% over the last year. But here's a Super Bowl game plan if you're looking to host a party. Steak, chicken wings, and avocados are the biggest bargains at the grocery store, believe it or not. That's according to a Wells Fargo report. A steak is roughly $10, with wings and avocados hovering around $2.65 and $1.20. With the good comes the bad. The most expensive items you can get: beer, soda, hot dogs, and chips. Those are staples. The drinks will cost around $2, but the dogs and chips are hovering around $5 to $6. Wow. Besides the food and the football, obviously, people are also excited to see the commercials. But as Tom Foreman explains, a unique campaign will be on display, talking about the teachings of Jesus Christ.
There was this controversial figure. Everywhere he went, people challenged him.
The message is stark, arresting, and backed by $100 million. That's how much organizers say is behind this campaign to market Jesus as a patient, loving, inclusive cure for our divisive times. With the tagline, "He gets us." Jason Vanderground.
We're trying to unify the American people around the confounding love and forgiveness of Jesus.
The campaign website is filled with phrases saying Jesus called out the toxic religious and political systems, led the protest against the walls that divide us, and broke the chains that held women in bondage. Merchandise declares Jesus was a refugee and an immigrant. At first blush, it can all read like a stand against radical right-wing politics and related divisiveness. But the campaign pointedly says this is not an attack on anyone. It is an outreach to young Americans whom polls show are abandoning Christianity and other faiths at a historic pace.
A lot of times when people look at Christianity, they see it as much more unfortunate, hypocritical, judgmental, kind of discriminatory.
Add the fact that He Gets Us is funded by anonymous donors acting through a Kansas nonprofit linked to staunchly conservative causes, and it raises alarms for some skeptics, such as CHRISSY STROOP, a former evangelical who now reports on religion.
I believe the He Gets Us campaign is a PR effort and website strategically developed by right-wing evangelicals to rope people in with inclusive-sounding messaging and get them plugged into local churches that will eventually teach them that to be a Christian means to support right-wing politics.
That was Tom Foreman reporting. The campaign's website says it's being funded by the Servant Foundation, but as we just heard, a majority of the actual donors are anonymous. A reunion with a lot of history. Spanish frescoes that were separated for 200 years have been reunited in Rome. The frescoes, painted for the Spanish noble banking family, the Herreras, will be on display together until February 5th. The family commissioned the art for their chapel in the early 17th century. The church was under the protection of the Spanish monarchy, and after the decline of Spanish rule in the 1830s, the frescoes were transported and separated. Deputy Director at the Museo Nacional del Prado, Andre Uveda, says after that, the paintings were nearly ruined and hidden.
They were treated like oil paintings, and they were treated many times. These varnishes yellowed over time, and the paintings were then covered with more varnish. In the case of the Prado Museum in Madrid, this led to their removal from the galleries in the 1970s and never taken out again.
Even though the frescoes have been restored, experts still say they are in mixed condition, explaining they are not in the best shape, but far from destroyed. Well, that's good news. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.